Okay, Shalom Aleichem, Baruchim Abayim, everyone. We're about to begin Bezus Hashem, our next shir in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We're up to chapter 8 in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which says Dvarim Ha'asurim Mishaher Hayom Ad La'achar Shispalel. Okay. So there's certain things that you have to daven first before you can do them. You can't just do whatever you want to do before you daven. The thing is that there are certain things about being ready to daven. That's also an issue. But so we're assuming with all of these things that we're talking about once one is ready to daven, that he cannot do these other things until once he is davened, until once he has said his morning prayers. So Aleph starts off Misha'Allah Amr Shachar Shahu Or Anotzeitz Min Hashemesh B'Mizrach. Kevin Sha'az Maschil Zman Tefillah Shemispalal as B'Diavad Yatzel L'chein Asur L'Adam L'Aschil B'Malacha Asik V'Sakav V'Leilach B'Derech Kedem Shispalal. Once the Amud Hashachar has risen, which is when the first rays of sunlight shines from the east, where the sun rises from. Since that's the time when you could start to daven, meaning that if you had prayed b'diavad, meaning really not supposed to pray so early, but if you did already, you wouldn't have to go back and pray again. Whereas if you prayed earlier than that, you would, but really that's not the right time to be praying. But you could daven then. Therefore, a person cannot do work or work in his own business affairs, whatever, or to travel or to travel on a trip. Before you pray. Now he says here that it's specific. He notes that it's specifically saying his own business matters, meaning if it's something for yourself, you can't do before you pray. But if it's to study Torah or to do another mitzvah, that you could do before you pray. But something that's personal, you cannot. And if you're preparing to pray, then you can also do before you pray. This means that really, ideally, if you have the time, and it's an early time before meaning you're allowed to technically pray, but it's still kind of early to pray. You should be studying Torah, or saying Psalms, or something else, until you pray. And the ideal time, and really even you can start the prayer service, the blessings and so forth, earlier than that, and that's really ideal to do that. And when we say to pray, we're talking about reciting the Shemona Esrei. And the Shemona Esrei for Shachris should ideally be recited at sunrise with the Shema just before sunrise, a few minutes before sunrise. That's the ideal. Earlier than that is not so ideal. And probably it's better if you have, let's say, the choice, between earlier and later. I would say later is probably better than earlier, but the perfect time is exactly that time. And that's what we call davening kivasikin. Unfortunately, a lot of shuls, they daven much earlier than that, depending on the location. That's a problem. But the ideal is at least, at sunrise, and if you pray later, it's also okay. And earlier is also okay, but it's not as good. but he shouldn't be doing any other work before that. Kodim shispal, before he prays. Shenemar tzedek lefanav yihalech v'yasem l'derech pamav. It says in Psalm 85, verse 14, that righteousness will precede him and he will set his footsteps um, upon the way. Tzedek, what is tzedek? Righteousness, zay tefillah. That's prayer. Why? Shematzdik levorei, because that justifies a person's life before God. Meaning, why should a person live? It's because why should God justify a person's life? And the answer is, it's because they pray. That justifies a person living. Tzedek zay tefillah shematzdik levorei v'hadar. Then you can go back and follow and go do whatever you need to do. The point I want to say about this, the notes here notice that in extreme circumstances it's permissible to pray while traveling. And again, you have to understand, why is a person, what are the extreme circumstances? What is, is a person going to do a mitzvah? And so forth, and that would cause him. So he's traveling to do a mitzvah, and he's praying while he's doing the mitzvah. However, of course, for the Shemona Esrei, for the Amida prayer, you should be standing still. But really, in even more extreme circumstances where that's not possible, you could actually, say the Amida prayer sitting down. Let's say you're sitting in a car as a passenger for sure. You don't have to concentrate on the road, on driving. If you can stop the car so you can stand up, it's better. I see. But if not, you could actually technically pray sitting down. I hope we didn't just lose everyone because my computer screen went blank. I'll continue nonetheless. Okay, Bays. So, v'asur la'adam lechol alishtais. Also, v'asur lechol alishtais. You're not allowed to eat or drink before you daven, before you pray. Shenem alei seichel al adam. It says in Leviticus 19:26, you should not eat on the blood, which means you shouldn't. And of course, it literally means you don't eat the blood. But also la sochlu kodim shisval dimchem. But also, you shouldn't pray. You shouldn't eat before you pray for your own blood, meaning for your own life. Anyone who eats and drinks and then davens afterwards, Olav Hakosov Omer, the scripture says of him, V'oisi ishlachta achri gavecha. It says in 1 Kings chapter 14, verse 9, and you have cast me behind your back. Al tikre gavecha elageyecha. You shouldn't read it your back, but rather your pride, your arrogance. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, God says, L'achar sh'niskoa zeh kibul of malchus shemayim. First, this guy who's so arrogant, he's going to eat before he prays, and then he's going to accept the kingdom of heaven through prayer. V'fil lishtais kafe oitei im sukar v'cholav aser. I'm sure 3 of those words you could probably figure out what they are. He says even to drink kafe, which means coffee, oitei or tea, im sukar with sugar, v'cholav, and milk aser, it's forbidden. V'ishzaken v'chalu she'enu yachal la'amid al nafshay ad eish yitzias etzibur m'beis ha'knesses befrat b'shabbasos v'yom tovim shemerichem harbe. Yoser Tov Lahater Lispal Shachris Bevese Bevnachas Vikadish Vyoichel Eze Davar Acher Kach Yelich Levese Knesses Vichaven Liboim Netziber Besvila Shachris Vispal Acher Kach Imoim Musaf. Um, and he says something very extreme, rather. This is not how we paskin. I don't think anyone paskins like this. But he says that it's better an old person who's weak and he can't, stand and pray, especially in Shabbos and when he can't wait to eat un, until the time when people are done davening, where they leave the shul, especially Shabbos and Yontif, where they daven very long davening. It's better actually to let him to daven Shachris by himself in his house quietly, and then make kiddush and eat something, and then he should go to shul and listen along to the prayers, follow along in his heart to the prayers of Shachris. I mean, that's something important that we see here. Even if you go somewhere else and you davened already, you should still follow the prayers. It would seem from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Vispalo achakach imoem musaf, and then you daven musaf together with them with the minyan. And he's v'loy sheyishta kafim sukkar chadayim b'lei kabbalos al malchus shamayim tchila. And he said it's better to do this rather than to drink coffee with sugar without accepting the kingdom of heaven, the yoke of the kingdom of heaven first. That it's actually better to daven privately, quickly, eat and make kiddush and eat, and then go to shul. But when it's needed for health reasons, then you could eat or drink before you pray. And you should notice though that he's saying coffee with sugar or milk, but just plain coffee or plain tea, it seems would be okay to pray to have before we pray. We'll see. But anyway, but for health reasons, you could always eat or drink before davening. Why she'ain b'zeh mishum geus? Because that's not considered arrogant. Also, the same thing. If a person cannot concentrate on the prayers without eating or drinking, if that's the reason why he's eating, then he could eat or drink before he prays. Meaning that if he is eating for himself, that's arrogant. But if he's eating so he can pray, so then that's okay. And really, I would say that would be okay. And generally, al pi halacha, the halacha that most would follow would say that it's better not to eat before you're praying, but if you need it in order to pray, it's okay. I know Nachman Breslover, he held that you should not even drink water before you pray. The other Chassidim generally will say that you can drink coffee, especially because it helps you to pray. Both gives you energy to pray, and also it's a laxative, which helps you to. The main reason is it's a laxative. It helps you to have a clean body before prayer. And then I know in Lubavitch they will eat anything before praying, but I don't know if they wash. But everything else, it would seem, they would eat before the cake and whatever they'll eat before prayer. And each one according to his own custom. Most Litvisha they're not eating before prayer, but some will, especially on Shabbos, especially older people. So we have all these different opinions. So it's everyone on his own level. Okay. according to his own community's custom, and really you should talk to your rabbi about the particular situations. Um, okay, Gimel. It says like this, number 3. Yesh oimim shefilim kam bechetzeis halayla aser leilitim kodim shispalo. Um, some people say even let's say he woke up at midnight. Like for example, he woke up to say the Tikkun Chatzos. He woke aser leilitim kodim shispalo. He cannot taste anything, which means eat, before he prays. It says here that it would seem that even according to those opinions, it would be okay to drink, but not to eat. And the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that's the right way to do. We say generally, like on a fast day, if someone wants to wake up before the fast begins, right? Most of the fast days begin in the morning. That you have to have in mind before you go to sleep that if you wake up early, that you should be able to eat. Otherwise, it seems like you're accepting the fast already. Um, but the thing is, why is he waking up at midnight to study Torah? So if he's very weak, he could eat or drink something to strengthen his body to study Torah and to say Tikkun Chatzos and so forth. All right, Dalit. Um, so he says here, "Mayim v'chinteya kafe b'lei sukkar of b'lei chalav mutar l'shtos kodem tefillah af la'achar shalad amud hashachar." He says water or tea or coffee without sugar and without milk. You can drink before you pray, even after the Amud Shachar, the daybreak. Ki ein be'elu mishum geis, because that is not an arrogant way of eating. I just want to note something that's here in the in the um, in the notes. He says if someone needs to eat for health, he should still say the Shema before eating. Ideally, one should say something before you eat. They should say the brachas as much as you can, and you should say the Shema for sure before you eat, because then at least you've accepted the kingdom of heaven by saying the Shema. And this is the same here, that you can drink tea, coffee, or water without any sugar or milk added, even before davening. This is not arrogant. Even on the holidays, Shabbos and Yontif, when you have to make kiddush before you eat, you can drink these things before you daven, and the kiddush is not holding you back. Why? Because you only have to make kiddush once you already daven shachris. Meaning, once you daven shachris, even if you didn't daven musaf yet, you're not allowed to eat or drink anything until you made kiddush. But if it's before you davened, then you can. And here comes in an issue though with the women, because women only don't have to say the whole davening. They technically just have to say whatever prayer they can, and you cannot eat or drink before you say any prayer. But once they said something, meaning a man, he could say brachas, could say Shema, and not have to make kiddush until he says the Shemona Esrei, the Amida of Shacharis, of the morning prayers. But a woman, once she says any prayer, she's really fulfilled her obligation. She has to make kiddush. So it would seem that a woman would then have to make kiddush in the morning when she's eating. So anyway, he says, "Kavan shekodim tefillah adayin lehigizman kiddush." Why is this that kiddush is connected to prayer? He says because before you pray, it's not the time for kiddush. Why? Then kiddush elamakom suda. Kiddush is only in the place of the meal. The hainu samach lechila, which means close to eating. V'hari efshaloi leachol kodim tefillas hashachar, and you can't eat the meal before you daven shacharis. So therefore, you don't make kiddush before shacharis. He says here, as far as sugar, he says it is an accepted custom to hold a piece of sugar in the mouth while drinking tea. Although he doesn't make it clear whether that's okay before davening. Um, One reason for doing that would be so you have what to make a bracha on, because it's so hot. It's a little difficult to make a bracha, to drink enough to to really make a bracha. So you make the bracha on the sugar. All right, another thing that you can't do before prayer. Hey, also lahaktim lefesach chaver lekabel panav litin leishalom. He says that you're not allowed to go early to your friend's door to see his face, meaning once we start davening, and to give him shalom, to greet him. Um, so he says here, commencing with daybreak, even to leave your seat in synagogue to greet someone you can, even a silent handshake is forbidden. He says, "V'filo loimer loy tzafra lemara tov." You can't even say to him, "Good morning, sir." Where do we derive this from? The book of Isaiah, chapter 2, verse 22. Chidlu lochem min adam asher neshama ba'apoi ki b'man nechshavu. It says, withdraw yourselves from man whose breath is still in his nostrils, because for what is he to be esteemed? Meaning he's not considered a man until he davens, so why would you say hello to him? Why would you want to greet this person before you greet God? But if you just happen to meet him, if you're going specifically to meet someone, it's a problem. But if you just happen to meet someone, you could greet him and say shalom. But it's better to change to say something else. Instead of saying shalom, say good morning. To remind us that you don't engage in other matters before you pray. However, he notes here that you're always permitted to respond to a greeting before you pray. And if someone else, you can't say hello first, but if someone else says hello to you, you can. Generally, as I understand, most people, um, for kiruv, to bring someone close to God, to the ways of God, you could do this. But someone who's already knowledgeable, they should know better. And this is where we'll conclude, because we're finishing the chapter. Vav, number 6. Afilu lumid aser lahaschil mishalar medashacher. He said even to study Torah, you can't start studying Torah once daybreak has risen. That's Rashi's opinion. We don't paskin like this, though. I don't know why the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings this, because we're not paskin like this, but he's being machmir here. But if someone is accustomed to go daven every day and he's not going to miss the time, then he's allowed to study Torah first. I mean, the Satmar Rebbe actually said that anyone who doesn't study for at least an hour before he davens is not a Jew. So there are different opinions by this. Obviously, the Satmar Rebbe said you have to study Torah at least for 1 hour before you pray. He didn't mean it halachically, but he's obviously that you're not a Jew if you don't do it. But he's for sure disagreeing with this opinion. But I guess he's depending on the fact that people are going to go and daven afterwards. And similarly, if someone is studying with other people, and if he doesn't study with them now, they're just not going to study, then he could learn with them. Because to bring merit to a group, that's a big thing. You have to be careful not to overlook the time of prayer, which, the different opinions when that is. All right, we're done a little early. We finished the whole chapter. My computer is acting up a little bit. I'll give a few minutes for questions. Tomorrow night, I'm not sure whether I'm going to do a live class or present an old class. But either way, we're going to be doing something for the yard side of the Heilige Rebbe Melech. If I have a live class, I might also do something from the Zohar, a little bit, maybe Bruch Shemay, which we say in davening when we take out the Torah, which is from this week's parsha. Um, but otherwise, probably not going to have the Zohar tomorrow night. Maybe yes, maybe no. Um, but we'll have a tish for the yard side of the Heilige Rebbe Melech, and which is tomorrow night. One of the yard sites. We'll have two this year, um, and hopefully we'll have some nice divrei Torah for the Rebbe's yard site. Okay. So Laser Wolf asks, does the Shulchan Aruch say that if you throw your fingernail clippings on the floor, a woman will miscarry if she steps on them? And the answer is yes. It's based on the Gemara and Brachas, um, and as a matter of fact, I've heard that you could bring someone to a din Torah if they're not careful about that. When there have been cases where women have miscarried and there were people in the house that they suspected might have not been careful with fingernail clippings, um, then you could actually bring someone to court over that, sue someone in a Jewish court of law over that. So we take that very seriously. Um, the easiest thing to do with the finger, although the thing is, once a fingernail clipping has been moved, meaning let's say it flew to another place and then it gets moved, then it doesn't have this. And the reason for this is that there are kochas atuma, there are forces of impurity, demons, and so forth, that are attracted to really any human body things. That's why, especially a Jewish body, but anything that comes from a human body, and that can you know cause a danger to a person. Um, certain demonic forces that are attracted to fingernail clippings and other things from the human body, bodily waste, and so forth. And so that's why we have to be careful. The easiest thing to do these days is to flush the fingernail clippings down the toilet. It's not a good idea to throw them in the garbage bag, garbage can, because you don't know what's going to be with them. But if you flush them down the toilet, that's an easy way to get rid of them. The Shulchan Aruch and others, they mention that it says three things. It says an extra pious person burns his fingernail clippings, a normal, frum person buries them, and a wicked person throws them around. So, okay. So that's the issue. Wow. So it's definitely something to be careful of because, and the same thing, I mean, fingernail clippings particularly because, but really anything that comes from the body, to be very, very careful of because the forces of even skin and hair to a lesser extent, they certainly have a tumor to them, but not so strong that it would cause a miscarriage. But still, these are things that should be put away. Um, and for sure, when skin comes off or you cut your hair or so forth, you have to wash your hands afterwards. That is in the Shulchan Aruch that after these things we wash our hands, but it's not quite the same. Fingernails have a little bit of extra impurity to them for various reasons. Um, Saliva, not really. That's not one of the things that generally is considered that it doesn't really attract the demonic forces and so forth. But still, with any of these things, it's if a little bit of skin or hangnail something comes off, or you have to wash your hands after bloodletting. You have to wash your hands. But the only one that we have the tradition that could cause a miscarriage is the fingernails. All the others we don't have such a thing. But let's say after bloodletting or after you donate blood or whatever, you should wash your hands after all these things, because when we wash our hands, it separates us from those demonic forces, because water they is something that can separate us from those forces, uh, forces or beings, whatever you want to call them. They're beings, um, and these beings generally will try to take advantage of people. Um, so we have to. But washing the hands is it's amazing how strong this is to free us from their influence. Okay, the my computer's acting up again, but um, I'll give a few more seconds for questions, and then again tomorrow night, 8 o'clock is Rabbi Maze's class, and at 9 o'clock, I'm not sure if I'll be live or taped, but we'll have something for the yard site of the Holy Rabbi Elimelech from Lezhant. Okay, any more questions? All right, have a very good night, and we'll see you all tomorrow. All right, Hatzlacha Rabba.